Okay, we're live, it looks like. So I have my guest here, the voice of reason. It's his birthday, so everybody can wish him a good birthday. And we have Reverend20Piece as well, who is also going to be one of the guests on this stream. So how are you guys doing today?
Great. Thank you very much, Dan. Thanks for having us, and thanks for putting this together for us. Doing fantastic. Old man sleep sitting over here, 43 years old today. Hoo-wee. I can't believe I made it this far. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I think I'm by far the youngest one of the people on here, but I still feel old, so.
Yeah, it's kind of a mindset, so to speak, yeah. But, you know, it's, but I like interacting with all different age groups of people, you know, to get different perspectives and different lines of thought, different, you know, ways of thought, thinking.
Yep, absolutely. There are things that I believe now or know now that 5 or 10 years ago I never would have believed. So there's an advantage in having that sort of gap in age sometimes.
Well, and if 2020 hasn't mentally aged us all at least 10 years, then I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. I was talking to my mom the other day because I'm going back to St. Louis for Thanksgiving, but which that's going to be a whole shit show in itself because my part of my family's quarantining because of COVID and all this shit, and it's just like I don't know. It's one thing, but what I mentioned to her, I was just like, you know, it's just been 2020 has just been a shit fucking year, but I've been trying to make the best of it. So, and this stream is part of that, in my opinion.
Yep. Yeah. They're not actually, they just basically are freaked out by the virus, you mean? And that's why they're kind of self-quarantining, or do they actually have, none of them have actually been in contact with it, hopefully.
It's my sister's boyfriend, who she lives with. He works for Boeing, and apparently someone in his department got coronavirus, and so they're quarantining the entire department. So it kind of extends to the family thing where they're not going to participate in Thanksgiving this year because of that. So it's just, I don't know. It's kind of one of them deals, but. Yeah, but the guy that caught it at Boeing, though, according to my sister, he actually died. So I mean, but I don't know the background of that guy's health. I mean, I'm sorry to hear that, but it's I don't know. I mean, maybe, I guess that's where we could start off. we had laid out some talking points, but I don't know what to believe with this coronavirus shit anymore. As far as you know, how bad it is, or because it seems like the media is just, they're more focused on the numbers rather than deaths and that type of thing, at least from what I'm seeing here in the States. Mainstream media, that is.
Yeah, you know, I mean, the whole thing is a clusterfuck, basically. You know, my view on it is, and this is something that I don't see people, you know, you have a lot of people that think that it's just completely bullshit, which they're closer to being right, I think, than the people who just listen to whatever the media tells them about how bad it is. But one thing about the coronavirus is, let's say you're a leader and you're not corrupt and you're trying to do the right thing in terms of this virus. You're trying to have a positive, you know, response as much as you can for something like this. If you would just tell the people the truth and just say, well, we don't have a cure for this, and wearing a mask is just going to slow down how much it spreads, but it's not going to change the overall outcome, unless we're right, you know, on the fringe of getting the cure, which I'm not buying into the idea that we are really. Some people say Pfizer has this, you know, vaccine that they're developing, but whatever, you know, we don't know how long it's going to take until that's developed, or whether it'll even succeed. My thing with it is, if you are honest with the people about this and you'd say, hey, you need to do your own risk assessment. If you're, you know, compromised in a way that can make you vulnerable to the virus, you need to stay home, and maybe you need to wear a mask, or you need to find alternative ways of doing things if possible. But, you know, overall, there's not much we can do to stop the virus in the long run, except develop a cure for it, if you're honest with people and you tell them that, they're going to freak out way more than what you see people doing when you just tell them, hey, wear a mask and stay home. Because people need to feel like they're doing something against the virus, because they can't deal with just the simple fact that we don't have a cure for this. They have to feel like wearing a mask and staying at home is a solution, because otherwise it's way worse than what you see, or it would be way worse than what you see with the people protesting on the other side. Like, people would be demanding government action. And the example that I use to compare this with is Hurricane Katrina back in 2005. It's like, you hear people all the time saying it's FEMA's fault that Hurricane Katrina resulted in what happened. And yeah, the government could have had a better response at different levels, I'm sure. But what did you really expect them to do when you live in an area below sea level and a major hurricane goes through? And yet you see all these people that think that the government should have just magically solved that situation somehow. And, things have just gotten worse in the 15 years since then in terms of what people expect. So because people can't do their own risk assessment, your average everyday person out there, they can't just say, well, if I feel like the virus could affect me in a negative way, maybe I need to wear a mask, but that may not be true for somebody else. Or maybe I need to stay home if I'm vulnerable to it. Instead of that, you just get, oh, stay at home, save lives. Everybody needs to do it. We're going to arrest you now if you don't wear a mask. And it's just a song and dance so that leaders can stay in power. But even if you had good intentions and you weren't trying to use this as a way to take people's basic rights away, you would get thrown out of office. You wouldn't get reelected, because telling people the truth is no longer something that most people can even handle.
Yeah, well, they don't want to hear the truth, and it kind of goes along the lines of lie to me and give me free shit type thing.
Yeah, that people feel better with that. It's all an emotional thing. It's not about, okay, there's nothing we can really do about this virus. It's basically at the same level as a pneumonia or a bad flu in terms of the people that it kills. It's not killing everybody. If this were a virus where 10% of everybody that got it died, even if you were a healthy individual to start off with, I think society would collapse. I think we'd be done in a lot of ways, honestly. I don't think people could handle it.
Yeah, no, if that was the case, then I'm not concerned about this shit at all. But if that was the case, the scenario you just described, Dan, yeah, I would be concerned then. But but it just isn't so. But what's more concerning to me, though, and this is kind of related to a video TVOR recently put out, though, is with some of these people actually getting fucking arrested for this shit, for not wearing masks. And it's unbelievable. There's a guy I follow called Mr. Guns and Gear. He puts up a lot of these freedom related type videos. And before I get too far down this lane, though, I do think this is a red pill related topic, because it's about red pill or MGTOW topic, because it's like once you get that, take the red pill and you look at things through a red pill lens, it's really a lot easier to see through the bullshit in my my point of view. But like TVOR put out that video with that guy getting arrested up there. I guess, was it in Alberta, I believe?
Yeah, the Costco incident. Yeah, the road to hell is paved with best intentions, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was in Alberta. It was an Alberta Costco, and it happened the other day. And the things that, just to throw my 2 cents with regards to what's happening up here, we're starting to see. I myself have had to make very quick adjustments in my own personal life. We had a masking mandate in this province of British Columbia for all public spaces, and I won't wear one. So that means I can't go to the grocery store. I can't go to the post office. I can't go anywhere without wearing this face diaper. And I'll tell you where I fall with this. We've seen the numbers. We've seen the actual stats can numbers. They fall in line with an average flu season. The amount of, we call it the case-demic, because they went from death numbers to scare people to cases. When did we talk about the flu or any other virus in the previous 7 decades like this? We didn't.
Yeah.
The way I look at it, I saw this awesome meme this morning, and it says, "The lie you participate in today becomes the future you live in tomorrow." And I believe that that's really kind of where we are. I look at a city like Edmonton, Alberta. today or last night, they actually took this mask mandating further. They said, well, we're not going to meet anymore. We're just going to extend this until next year, until 2021. You need to wear a mask in every public space until 2021. That's it. We're not going to pay attention to nothing. We're just going to do it. So I see this as a power grab. I see it getting worse.
Yep.
I've seen worldwide, and I did the video recently about the worldwide revolutions that are happening. They're happening because people are tired of this.
Yeah. There was big one in, I believe, in France today. They were protesting in Paris, I believe.
Yeah, I watched some of Red Pill Germany's videos, and he's been showing a lot of protests over there in Berlin and those places too. So, I think it's compared to the United States, they have some pretty draconian policies toward this. But like I say, a lot of leaders don't have good intentions, of course, and they want power, but it's just a matter of manipulating people emotionally to do what you want them to do. I think a lot of it, because there's really not, this whole thing is just so overblown that when you look at the core of it all, it's just, what is it that's making people think that this, like, I can understand certain protocols in hospitals and nursing homes and stuff like that, like where the vulnerable people have to be. I can understand caring about, their lives and not wanting them to get the virus. But as for the general population, and a lot of these leaders will say, well, there's no such thing as herd resistance. If you talk about herd resistance, you're uneducated, but clearly there is at the very least herd resistance, because that's how people get over it. If people didn't develop antibodies against it, no one would survive it, right? Or very few people would survive it if our immune systems weren't capable of doing that. So, my take on it is it doesn't make any sense to do things this way, because it's just going to continue to spread. It's just at a slower rate, and it's just going to take longer to get to a point where we reach herd resistance or immunity. And people will say, well, this person over here got the virus twice, so that means there's no herd immunity. Well, people can get the chicken pox twice too, but that's not usually the case. How do we deal with chicken pox? The kids get it at an early age, and then they don't get it anymore unless it comes back as shingles, but that's a different thing. Nasty thing. Yeah, shingles, most people, really older people, when they get that, they have a problem with that too. But this idea that herd immunity or herd resistance isn't an option, like that, those are the only two options. You either find a cure for the disease, or the people develop a resistance against it. And yet people think that wearing a mask and staying at home actually changes that dynamic, and it doesn't. It just prolongs the whole process until we eventually have a cure for it or enough people get it. But it's easier to convince people that, well, we're just going to take your rights away and pretend that does something positive. That's the easiest thing for the government to do ever at basically any level.
Yeah,
so,
that's a Mark Twain quote, isn't it, too, right? It's easier to fool people than to, kind of tell them that they've been fooled, right?
Yeah. And they can't think about it for themselves and do their own risk assessment, so they've just let the government do it for them, basically.
Yeah, and that's what you mentioned, Dan, though, about the the rights and restrictions being taken away. That's one of the things that I'm most worried about, is after all this shit is over, kind of like 9/11, what's it going to look like? What freedoms will we have lost? And that we're not going to get back in the end of it, So I don't know. That's what really concerns me a lot.
Right. A lot of it probably, I think in the United States, it's going to depend on what state you live in. If you live in a more conservative area where the Republicans aren't necessarily conservative anymore, but the right is basically the dominant force, I think most of it will go back. In Ohio, I'm optimistic, I guess, that a lot of it will go back. But then at the same time, in some of your more left-leaning states, they'll probably try to convince the people that they, need to social distance forever or whatever. That wouldn't surprise me either. In Europe and in other countries, they may be more able to just continue to, I'm not sure what Canada, it might be a similar situation as far as what province you live in, but in Europe, I imagine a lot of those countries will probably try to hold on to that power. And you know, a lot of what's going on, I've heard that you have to like call the authorities before you leave your home now. And I think TVOR, you showed a list of, I don't know whether it was in a particular province where you have to have a particular thing that you want to buy in person. You can't just go buy anything. It has to be approved by whatever level of government before you can even legally purchase things in person now. So
yeah, it's communism. We've got communism in Manitoba. It'll follow suit. Manitoba, you know, Western Canadian province, we've got a situation in which basically people have, you know, essential items and non-essential items. And where have we heard this nomenclature before? You know, essential essential jobs, non-essential jobs, essential businesses, non-essential businesses. So there is, I don't know if you want to call it soft communism, but essentially people can't go in and buy things like clothing. So if you're a construction worker and you need a particular type of thing, you can't go into the store to physically buy it. I saw pictures of Costco this morning, you know, taping off sections, Walmart taping off sections. Now, I won't be, I'm not trying to fearmonger, but you can buy these things on the internet from the stores. But I think that, you know, there's something about that that's just not sitting right. And if it follows in one province, it'll follow in the rest. That's just kind of what's happening. Same thing with the mask mandates and everything else. If you get it in one spot, it'll spread to the rest of them. And so it's really kind of the same thing. And like I said the other day, guys, I can't even go into a store now at all. Like I can't without having, you know, and I won't wear one. I just won't do it. So I order all my, I got to order all my groceries online and everything. We're falling down a really dark path here as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting. You mentioned the clothing thing because I'm involved with the preparedness groups here locally, and I just, you know, it's kind of another thing I do. But the one of the guys in the group that I'm in, he had mentioned he went to Kohl's, which if you don't have them in Canada, it's just like a you know, Target or something like that type of department store with the. But anyway, so he went to go buy some pants there, and you can buy the shit, but you couldn't try it on. So he had to buy it and take it home and try it on. It was kind of a deal.
Yeah, even the Walmarts in my area have closed their they've closed their dressing rooms. You can't try them. Yeah, so you better know your size. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, guys, that virus is just coming out of my balls. You know, it's just like, you know, I'm just, you know, that's it, man. As soon as I take those drawers off, that's it. Virus coming out of me everywhere.
I mean, granted, there's probably some people you don't want trying to clothes on. I mean, not because of the coronavirus, though, but yeah. I guess just wash your shit before you wear it if you buy it at the store. I guess that'd be my recommendation.
Yeah, that's regardless of any virus. Yeah.
Yeah. But, I did have a question though for TVOR, just for clarification, because you had mentioned the guy in that video where at Kohl's where he got arrested, and which is, I mean, it just, again, that doesn't make sense to me. You're gonna arrest somebody and throw them in jail where they're gonna just sit there, and spread the virus to other inmates. But anyway, I
hadn't thought about that. Yeah.
Yeah, but is the Charter of Rights, is that equivalent to the U.S. kind of Bill of Rights, or is that similar?
It's supposed to be. It's being used as toilet paper at present, unfortunately. I mean, you know, when it comes down to medical tyranny and these masks and that sort of thing, we've got a constitutional lawyer who's worked within the government here. His name's Rocco Galati. So for anybody who's interested, he's on Twitter. I pump him up because he's got a YouTube channel called the Constitutional Rights Center here in Canada. He tries to educate and inform people. He's part of a lot of freedom rallies up here that we're having, amongst other people that I follow. And, you know, he's pretty much gone in on the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and shown, like, look, no, you can't, you know, deny people access to, like, this is a public business. Costco, you're a public business. You serve people. And what you're doing by saying, hey, I can't pick up my prescriptions, I can't do this, is you're treating people like second-class citizens. You know, now it's going to be like, your papers, please, like 1930s Germany, you know, show me your digital ID for a vaccine, or like, is this where we're headed? Like, we have to, like, we're starting to head, like I said, down a dystopian dark path here. And the Charter of Rights, I mean, they're in the Atlantic part of Canada. There's a travel bubble there, and you know, even in the charter, it explicitly says, look, you cannot deny someone travel interprovincially. You cannot deny, all this other stuff. It's all there, but yet, you know, people are going to have to stand up for it. There's going to have to be revolution, and I'm starting to see it finally. I'm starting to see people kind of wake up to it online, going, you know, this is bullshit. So I'm all for that. I'm all for that. It's time to probably rise up against this stuff, because it's only going to get worse. They will take more and more away from us.
Yeah, you know, I have a question about that as well. I know in the United States, you have a lot of people, especially your more conservative people, who anytime you take people's rights away, or even with this election, and that's a different topic, we may get into that, a lot of the time conservatives will just retreat and they'll say, well, we have the Constitution, we have the right to bear arms, we have the Bill of Rights. And so they rely on that to basically, they think that that's going to act for them as far as defending their basic liberties. And so they're not willing to go out and actually demonstrate or protest against that. So I don't know if you've noticed that in Canada as well, where people will say, well, we still have these rights because of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, but then those rights are being taken away without them even acknowledging it a lot of the time. In the United States, especially with the right to bear arms, I know gun rights are different from one country to another, but people will say, well, we just have these rights, so it's okay if Trump doesn't get in, or it's okay if we're forced to wear a mask or whatever, because at least we can defend ourselves. And then you look around and people's rights are just being taken away. It's just a piece of paper if people aren't willing to kind of back that up. And so I see a lot of that in the United States. I don't know if that's the way it is in a lot of other places too, like Canada, or not.
Well, you've touched on it. This is the crux. It literally is like your insignia, Dan. It's like the MGTOW path. We're either going to go one way or we're going to go the other way. And we're at the crux of it right now. And I think, you know, you're 100% accurate on this. There's no doubt about it that, you know, you can have this piece of paper, but it's not going to have a lot of meaning unless people are willing to stand up for it, you know, put forth legal challenges, be willing to get the fines, be willing to be arrested, and be willing to protest. And I know the protests here, they started out small, but they've been, you know, Vancouver, Toronto, Saskatoon, Edmonton, Calgary, all the major centers, Montreal. You know, I haven't seen any in the Atlantic bubble, which kind of worries me a little bit. I lived out there for a while. A lot of beautiful people out there, nice people, nice land. But yeah, I mean, like you said, I couldn't agree with that anymore. You got to stand up for your rights and you got to fight for them. And sometimes it's going to make you uncomfortable, and maybe you need to spend a night or two in jail, and that's the way it goes.
Yeah. To add to that, one criticism I've seen though from several of the preparedness communities and Second Amendment people that I follow was that a lot of right wingers, if you want to call them that, talk all this shit about, you know, we got the guns, the ammo, and all that, but they don't do anything about it. You know, it's the left wingers that are out in the streets, you know, actually trying to make change. So I don't know. I would like to think at some point people will get pushed far enough that they'll do something, but I am skeptical, because I mean, I'm not trying to start any shit and get out there and, you know, blow people away. I mean, I guess you got to have your red line where it's, you know, it's just too much. But on a local level though, too, I do live in a heavily red state, and it's a little bit different locally, I guess. You know, this isn't New York or California.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, at least not yet. It always could be, you know, at some point. But.
And I think what you said, Rev, is actually kind of the crux of it. Is like you said, you know, I listened to a guy on the Rush Limbaugh show. I caught a clip on Twitter the other night, and he was bawling. Him and his son, he's an older man. Him and his son were out there at the Washington March with the Republicans, and he said, you know, I didn't see any support, Rush. I didn't see, you know, the Democrats are out here. The Democrats are out here with all other people, all the representatives. And he goes, well, what do you mean? Rush says, what do you mean? He's like, the Republican Party, like the people supposedly standing up for Trump, there was no representatives there. And, you know, you look at the situation, like you said, with regards to the violent situation, or like the people standing up and doing things in the streets, you see a lot of Democrats doing that, but not so much on the Republican side, or the right side, I guess. I think the reason, well, in my head, you won't, like you said, it's going to have to come to a brink. It's going to have to come to a point, because once it hits that point, then we're going to start seeing some serious things. Some serious shit is going to go down. I think it's going to have to hit that line, and then it gets serious. I mean, at least that's my thinking on it.
Well, and then without getting into too much detail, and I definitely, there are people are organizing. I will say that much. And I've seen, not just here in Arkansas, there are people that are actually getting organized. There are people that were already organized, and then there are people that are I don't know. I don't want to give too much away, but there is stuff going on in the background. But
don't get the stream banned, Rev.
yeah. So, but it's again, though, the people that I talk to locally, they're not looking for a fight. They're not looking to go to Washington D.C. and take over. They're just looking to not lose any more freedom. And if problems come here locally, we'll deal with it locally. That's kind of the approach people I'm talking to are taking here, at least.
Yeah, that's not unreasonable, because that's the area where you can have the most effect and influence. But a lot of what I see with this virus reaction and everything else, even a lot of people will say, well, if the Republicans were in charge, things would be different. And that's another problem, is that even the Republicans, who are supposedly the conservative party, you look at states with Republican governors, and a lot of them have the mask mandates. A lot of them have the stay-at-home orders. And, we haven't had a stay-at-home order since like April, I think, in Ohio. But even then, it's just like very little of it made sense. Some of the videos that I made about it, I discussed how a so-called essential service was like fast food. Now, in a real in a true pandemic, does that make sense that fast food and dry cleaners, laundromats might make sense because people can go there themselves and take care of their laundry. But, the medical marijuana facilities and stuff like that, it's like that's an essential service during a pandemic. Okay. It just doesn't pass the obvious test that people should be doing, but people don't do their own risk assessment, like I said. And if you had a leader or you had a politician that was willing to be honest about that, they're not going to get elected in most places, because people would rather hear that staying home saves lives, and, wearing a mask stops the virus. It's just easier to believe that.
Well, Dan, in a pandemic, you got to have your Big Mac and your bug and your weed. So.
Yeah, so you can forget that there's a pandemic, I guess. Yeah.
Hey guys, remember the government loves us and they want to take care of us. So we're not going to ban the Big Macs and and the booze and the weed and everything else, right? We're not going to ban any of that shit. But you can't shop for clothes for work. Forget about that. That's off the charts.
Well, and the perfect point to what you said, TVOR, is one thing I do believe is that if you have, with this whole virus thing, is if you have, the statistics seem to bear out that if you have pre-existing immunocompromised conditions or obese or whatever, that you're more susceptible to becoming sick from the virus. Well, but they're not gonna, but all this unhealthy shit is essential services. So, okay.
Well, yeah, ban cigarettes then. If you really want to go full bore with it, as you mentioned, comorbidities, man. The comorbidities are the actual number with coronavirus and having one or more comorbidities is absolutely staggering. I think and I'm not going to throw out too many numbers here, but it's the vast majority of people that are dying from this virus. They have many, and we're talking things like hypertension, which, high blood pressure, I'm one of those people. But I'm also not, the average age for the death of this, deaths with COVID, which is what, 80s, 70s, 80s?
Yeah, pretty much.
So an average flu season again. So let's just, and again, the Nuremberg Code. That's why I threw it in one of my recent videos. Guys, look, is the cure, the lockdowns and everything else that's happening, is that better than actually catching this virus with a 99.9% recovery rate? Because the fact of the matter is, people's livelihoods, small and medium-sized businesses, homeowners, mortgages, financial systems, people are suiciding themselves. Old granny yesterday, I was poor old granny yesterday in the story I was looking at. She's 90. She says, I can't live through a second lockdown. She took a shot, went to sleep forever because she just couldn't deal with this anymore. People are committing suicide. People are dying, and many more are dying from opioid abuse. You know, we got to keep the liquor stores open. You got to keep, because we want more people to off. I mean, I hate to be this way, but man, if you can't look in the past and think, you know, your government hasn't done some seriously messed up shit to mess with you and the population, if you haven't seen that before, then yes, trust your government, take the vaccine, and don't listen, you know, to me, I guess.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's insane. Well, go ahead, Dan.
Well, I was just going to say, one thing I've noticed is that there's a similar effect at the societal level as compared to the individual level in terms of people who get COVID. Just like with the individual person that is sick or has, you know, an underlying health issue or is really old and has a weak immune system, just like those people are the only ones that are seriously affected by COVID. It's the same at the societal level. Only societies that are sick, dying, in a state of decline or decay, and have major issues going on, only those societies are going to react the way that our society has to this virus. Like, if you had a healthy society, they would say, hey, you know, you need to do your own risk assessment as individuals. People would be aware that this could be a problem if they have underlying health conditions, but it wouldn't destroy the economy in the society the way that the virus has here. So it really is just the same. It's the same at the collective level as it is at the individual level. You know, it's like only societies that are already messed up and in bad shape are going to have this kind of reaction, I think. And it's just highlighting some of the underlying problems that we already have. If we were at a different point in our society, you know, granted, you might not have the same level of medical technology and care, so more people might end up dying from COVID or whatever, but overall, people would not be reacting the way they are. You know, it's just our society is old and weak and dying, just like a lot of the people who actually have the negative effects of COVID already have those underlying conditions. It's weird how there's a parallel there, but that's just another thing I've noticed.
Well, it'd be a shame if people took personal responsibility for their actions and their health, right? So,
yeah, it's easier to just wear a mask and lecture everybody else that doesn't. And that's another aspect of it, is that, you know, by having these mask mandates and stay-at-home orders, for the people that want the government to solve the problem, it allows the government itself and our leaders themselves to basically deflect the blame onto those other groups of people. So it's not the governor's fault or your president's fault that we don't have a solution to the virus. It's these people over here that aren't wearing masks. It's these people over here that refuse to stay home. So it allows that sort of deflection rather than people just going all out and saying, well, you need to have a cure. You know, why don't you have a solution for this for us? You take those people that, again, I think you have to acknowledge that those people are going to demand that the government has an answer, even when it's unreasonable to expect that. And you have to take that blame and actually deflect it onto other groups. And that's another reason for these policies as well, I think.
Well, and I hate to use Sweden as a you know, prime example of being a healthy society. I know they have massive immigration issues there that we've talked about. I mean, the Manosphere's talked about, I'm sure of it. But, you know, Sweden is a place where I see video from different people and they're living life day to day. And they're doing whatever, they're doing normal shit. They're not doing anything different. They're not wearing masks. The vast majority of them, they're not social distancing. They're just living their lives. And, you know, so, I mean, if you want to check out, you know, people's video from Sweden, there's one girl in particular on Twitter. I kind of follow her. Her name's Svetlana. She's from Russia. And she just takes her phone out and she's asking people questions. And she's like, you know, people think that we're getting microchipped and this and that and da-da-da-da-da. And then people look at her like, are you crazy, right? And shops are open. Like I said, transit's normal. Things are normal. Things are functioning. So it's wild because it's like this one society out of like all these other societies that are lost their damn minds hasn't lost their damn mind.
Yeah, and Sweden itself has, you know, problems with feminism being so out of control and stuff like that. You would think that they wouldn't be that sort of red pill when it comes to these issues, but apparently they are, you know. And I noticed when all this started, you would see on the media, the mainstream left-wing media that, Sweden was so foolish and their numbers are so out of control because they're not doing the stay-at-home stuff. And now it's, we don't want to talk about Sweden. Like, you never hear them talk about it anymore because, I haven't seen what the numbers have been there lately, but I'm sure they're way down compared to over here. So, they don't want to talk about it now that they're on the other end of it and they're recovering, because it doesn't go along with their narrative that, somehow staying at home and wearing a mask is the answer, even though it doesn't change anything about the course of the virus. It just delays what eventually will happen. Either we'll have a cure eventually, or people will develop their own cure in terms of their own antibodies. But, it's a matter of, we don't want to talk about Sweden now because it doesn't fit the story that we're trying to give to people.
Exactly.
And if you do...
Oh, go ahead, TVOR.
I was just going to add a quick point, and if you do talk about it, there's a stream that I saw yesterday in Germany of a doctor who's talking about it online, and the police literally broke into his house and pulled him away, knocked the camera away from the damn live stream because he's spouting too much real life knowledge. This is happening. This happened in Germany. Now, I'm telling you, there could be a reason why he got arrested. It could have been something unrelated. But we need to look for more of this kind of stuff because things are being floated all over the world that we need to be paying attention to. Again, Denmark is one of those places. I put it in my video. They succeeded by protesting for 9 days, banging pots and pans in front of Parliament. Lots of people. And you know what they're trying to push? Mandatory vaccinations. Well, all of us crazy conspiracy theorists have been talking about this for a long time. They're trying to float these things in different places to see where it'll take.
Yeah.
Well, to add to Dan's point with the lockdowns, and staying at home and wearing masks, if the masks, if the masks were so effective and the lockdown was so effective, why didn't it work the first fucking time? Why are we doing it again now, the second time?
Well, that's part of the blame game too, because they'll point at the people that don't wear a mask and they'll say, "Look at this 10% of people that aren't wearing a mask. It's their fault that it continues. They're not obeying the law. If they just do what we tell them, like you are, as a good citizen, then everything would be fine and the virus would just disappear," which is nonsense. But again, that suits the goals of our political establishment. And even, like I say, if you were trying to be honest with the people, it's much easier to lie to them in this way and say, well, it's this other group of people's fault for not wearing a mask, than it is to just acknowledge how things have gone and realize, again, there is no cure for this, so you're on your own. People can't deal with that.
Yeah, it's social and psychological. It's social and psychological conditioning, and that's part of the reason why, it's like, all these different controls have been, put there. It's like pushing and pulling until people kind of go, okay, enough already. I'll just accept what you're saying and follow you, and that's it. And then, of course, like you said, it's making people go versus people. It's pounding it. It's the non-maskers versus, they don't want people to unite. They want to divide the shit out of us because a divided population is a conquerable one, and we're very easy to control then. And that's what's happening right now. And that's part of the reason why instantly, as soon as they made this mask mandate here, I said, you know what? I'm not gonna be the guy that's gonna go. My voice is more important online. I figure I'm not gonna go to jail. I'm not even gonna bother anybody here. It's gonna cost me more. I'll order my groceries online right now. Yes, my rights and freedoms are being trampled on, but I'm better served talking about this in front of a microphone. Now, if you want to arrest me, like the guy in Germany, you want to break into my home, and you want to throw me in jail like a true fascist. Okay, that's fine. Let's get it on.
Yeah. Yeah, otherwise it doesn't make sense to, I agree, it doesn't make sense to put yourself in that situation. It's not going to change anything other than now you're in jail or whatnot. But yeah, it's unfortunate, but a lot of people just, they fall for the divide and conquer tactics. You see this with the recent elections and everything else. It's all about just dividing people up so that they don't realize that their rights are being taken away by certain leaders, by the government in general. They don't want people to realize that. They want people to think they're doing something against the virus by staying at home and whatnot, when really, again, that doesn't solve or accomplish anything.
Well, and to that point, Dan, and kind of what TVOR was saying with the with with the media, and Dan's touched on this topic in his videos, is with the elections and this crazy Trump derangement syndrome. And don't get this mixed up or take it the wrong way or misunderstand me. I'm not a huge Trump fan. I mean, I do support him overall, and I think overall he's done a good job. But either way, as I'm more libertarian, but that's a different topic. But with this Trump derangement syndrome, it's like what Dan was saying in a couple of his election coverage videos. That the media has been, it's like the mainstream media has just been repeating these negative anti-Trump spin for 4 years. Eventually some of that shit sticks with some of these people and it just kind of sinks in. They just start to believe it.
Yeah. Like with what TVOR was saying, as far as people being exhausted from all this and then finally giving in. I know some people in my family and they voted for Trump. They're not totally in the sense of giving up on the political system. They're not totally defeated, but one of my aunts said, at least this whole Trump nonsense is going to go away soon. She voted for Trump, but at the same time, she's tired of all the divisions that the media primarily creates. And Trump makes himself an easy target a lot of the time by some of the things that he says and does. And I think we're almost in the exact same boat, Rev, as far as how we view Trump. I'm more libertarian leaning as well. I don't have this idea that Trump is always right and everything he says is true or whatever. I take a step back and I don't really believe anybody, honestly. I'm pretty skeptical about both sides, but I voted for Trump and I agree more with Trump's platform by far than the Marxist leftist platform that the Democrats have adopted. Well,
the policy I take is, as far as my position is, with anything that's political or really not just political, anything in life is it's best to do your own research. But granted, it takes time to do research, and some people, are just flat out lazy and they won't do any research and they just believe what they're told. But I will give the people that are lazy, the one thing I will give them is that research takes time. So, and we all have a limited amount of time that we can do shit. So I don't know.
Yeah, but compared to the average voter's level of awareness, they do almost no research at all. It wouldn't take much to exceed the amount of knowledge or independent sort of research that the average voter does. And a lot of them, as I said, I always thought that Trump was a long shot to win this last election, more so than he was in 2016, because you have people that just sit at home and watch CNN or MSNBC or even Fox News to some extent now, as they start to swing further to the left. And they're not doing their own research at all. They're just going to believe Orange Man bad because that's basically all they've heard. And you have the other side. You have the people that listen to everything the media says and just says, you know what, that's all BS. I'm just going to listen to what Trump says. You have those people as well, but not in nearly as large of a number in terms of being brainwashed by everything that they hear from the media. So, a lot of people, a lot of the Trump supporters, and I don't know how much we're going to get into this, but the area where I disagree with a lot of the Trump supporters was I thought he was always a long shot to win as a result of these things, despite what happened in 2016 when he ran against Hillary and all that. It's just this long campaign that the media has basically done for the Democratic Party, regardless of who their nominee was going to be. I thought that the American people were dumb enough to vote for somebody that basically has dementia and has been in politics for 50 years. Has not done anything positive in that whole time. Yes, people will vote for Biden because they're that dumb. They're just going to fall for what the media tells them. And it was a closer election than what I thought it was going to be. And like I said, I don't know how much we want to get into that, but it was close. So at least there's some hope that some people saw through all the propaganda, but a lot of people didn't as well. And you can argue whether Trump got cheated and whether he could have won if there was no election fraud or whatever. But, a lot of people did vote for Biden because they voted against Trump. That was their whole mentality. Trump bad, Orange Man bad. And that's what they did. And just to make one last point on that, a lot of the people, like I say, in my family, who are generally conservative-minded people, they're not people that really care about LGBTQ. They're not people that care about, BLM. They're not feminists. But yet at the same time, even though it's against their interests, they voted for Biden anyway, because they still fell for the propaganda. They don't realize that the Democratic Party and their entire platform is basically, you're the boogeyman for everything. You're bad. You're the oppressor. They don't realize any of that. They fall for whatever the media tells them, despite their general lifestyle and political views. It didn't matter. They weren't smart enough to do their own research and realize how hostile Biden and other Democrats are against them. And I think that's a shame.
The only thing I just gotta throw this out there, and this is an interesting thing that I had thought about before too. You remember the show called The Apprentice with Donald Trump? Right. Yeah. Okay. Here's this guy. Now, I remember my grandmother, when she, God rest her soul, she used to watch this show. And I remember a lot of people used to watch this show. And it started back in 2004. It had, his daughter and everybody else, right? And it went from 2004 to about before he got in there. Now, I remember, just from a media perspective, he was like the media sweetheart. He was on WWE, body slamming people. He was like, in Home Alone, the movie. They loved him then, basically. Well, yeah. So it's like, he was with the Reverend Jesse Jackson and Rosa Parks. He's had all kinds of philanthropy. He's done all kinds. Jenny Jones, he used to give away money to people, little kids, everything. This guy.
But now he's racist.
But all of a sudden, as soon as he ran, and I have to remind people, look, he's not a 50-year career politician. He's never been a politician. He's always been a businessman and a philanthropist, and maybe a bit of a media whore. But I mean, realistically, guys, he's about as outside the political spectrum as you could possibly get. So just keep that in mind. He's not taking a salary. Okay, he's like one of the only presidents, if not the only one. He didn't start any wars. One of the only of the last 5, as far as I can tell. He didn't start any wars. He's trying to pull troops out of different places. Like, this guy is about as anti-establishment as you could possibly get. So, wait, give the man a bit of a break here. That's all I got to say about that, anyways.
Well, that could be the whole problem. Is he's not towing the that deep state line, so to speak.
Yep. Yeah.
Yep. But people don't realize that. Like, they don't realize what Trump versus Biden really represents. Most people, your average voter, they have no clue. They just think that it's about, they just think it's something as simple as conservative versus center left or something like that. They have no clue what the Democratic Party represents now. They don't realize that Trump is the anti-establishment candidate. They don't fully realize that, I don't think. They think he's just a bad guy that wants power. That's basically what the media has taught people to think about Trump.
Yeah, because he's terse. He's not Obama with his smooth words. Okay, that's the thing. Obama, he had smooth ass words. That's fantastic. And Trump, he's terse. Okay, yeah, they couldn't be any more diametrically opposed. I get it. But if you look beyond the terseness, he's giving you the real. He's giving you the real person. He's not giving you this fake made up person. And at least as far as I can tell. And I mean, he didn't, it's like, oh, well, he only paid $750 in taxes. Well, he prepaid all his taxes. They always try and come up with shit. And it's mind-blowing. It's just mind-blowing to me because, again, I see the things he's doing. I look at this election. I look at the rallies. That you got tens of thousands of people. Say what you want about that Corona Chan. Oh, my God, blah, blah, blah. And then you've got Biden, who's got like 10 people in circles. And that's his big event. And it's like, oh, because he's being responsible. No, it's because the old bastard couldn't get anybody to come to his damn events. That's what the hell's going on here. Like, wake up, people, like it just, we're going to vote all the way down that ballot. But, for president, we're going to choose Biden, but everybody else is going to be Republican. Like, and we're seeing votes like that too. And it's like, guys, more seats in the House, right? Same amount of seats in the Senate. Well, how does that make any sense than if Trump wasn't elected president? Like, the whole thing stinks, guys.
Well, I think part of that is, basically, a lot of people, like I say, some more conservative-minded people would vote potentially Republican for a lot of the other races. But because the propaganda has been all anti-Trump more than it has been, well, you can't vote for any Republicans and all the Republicans are the same. So I think a lot of people that, like I say, are more conservative with their views did vote for Biden, regardless of where they voted for everything else. And I also think a lot of those people were the mail-in ballot people, because a lot of those people weren't enthusiastic enough to actually go out and vote for Biden on election day, but sitting on their ass watching CNN and basically digesting all that propaganda. They could sit there and they could fill it out for Biden and then vote for whomever they wanted as far as the other races went. But it doesn't necessarily surprise me that it ended up that way. And a lot of people will also say, do you think that it's reasonable that Biden could have ended up with more votes than Obama ever got? And I think so, because people are just that much set against Trump and indoctrinated to vote against Trump that, of course they're not motivated to go to these rallies. They don't really even care about Biden. It's just the anti-Trump vote. And that's really what a lot of it boils down to, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. And well, this is kind of related, but it just came in my head while you're talking about the anti-Trump stuff. The last time I was, that my mom and she visited me down here, she brought my niece, who's she's I think 14 now, but they both came to visit me, and they're both hardcore anti-Trump. But the point of it is my niece is 14 years old. How does she really have any political insight? Yeah. I didn't really check her, but that's what I was thinking. I'm like, you don't know shit, but obviously she's been indoctrinated at school and shit like that before COVID, I guess, but since they're virtually doing school now. But TVOR though, Dan, you're mentioning CNN. Is there a Canadian equivalent that covers Canadian politics, or is it kind of the same thing? Or
well, here I'll give you what's going on up here. So we've got the CBC, which is now the Communist Broadcasting Corporation. It's supposed to be Canadian, but we'll call it communist. We've got Global News, which is the same arm of that, and we've got all these other papers and CTV, which is again communist television. iComrade, it's just it's ridiculous. It's just they've all got paid. Last year they got somewhere in the neighborhood of $600 million by the Liberal government. When a government is giving and paying your media stations, you already know it's done, because there's no level of separation. It's church and state, guys. You can't do that kind of shit, right? And so, I mean, all they do is talk anti-Trump stuff up here, and it's the same. They don't talk about, they deflect. They don't talk about Trudeau. He's the media darling. No matter what he does, everything. He's like Obama, right? He's like he walks on water up here. And if you look at comments on Twitter, it's like, man, but people are not saying that. So it's like, and now we're talking about the Dominion voting thing up here, and there's a lot going on behind that, guys. And as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I'm one of those guys that believes in the voter fraud. I'm one of those guys that believes that Trump probably got 400 out of the 500, whatever, overall votes. I'm one of those guys that think he overwhelmingly won this election, and it was hardcore rigged by the deep state. I mean, we'll see what Sydney's got. She says she's got smoking guns from everywhere. We'll see what happens. But it's bad. It's bad. I mean, and again, I stopped watching mainstream media probably about 7 or 8 years ago when I left the corporate world myself. I stopped watching that stuff, and boy, did I ever wake up to a lot of stuff, man. I always thought, the deep state and what's that, and all this other stuff going on. Like, what is this really, right? These dark secrets. And I started watching documentaries, and I started watching and looking at different things that were not related to the mainstream media. And boy, did it all seem to start, coalescing into this congealed similarity of stuff. We'll just call it that.
Yeah, well, TVOR, to add to what you just said there with the media thing, I really used to enjoy listening to NPR down here, National Public Radio, and I still listen to it, but I listen to it just to see what kind of bullshit that they're spitting out now.
Yeah, I do that too.
And just as an example, one of the recent news articles, and I can send you the picture. I took a screenshot of it, but if you want, but they had they were talking about, in the article it mentioned the Proud Boys being this right wing extremist hate group, and being a racist hate group and all this shit. But in the picture they took that they were showing of the Proud Boys, there's 2 black guys in the crowd. And I'm like, Like, do people see this shit? You know, just the blatant fucking lies. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, the media is just out of control. I just don't understand how people can't see through this bullshit. But I mean, I guess that's why we're here talking about what we're talking about today.
Absolutely. I saw that recently too, Rev, with two black dudes, and they were talking, they're Proud Boys and all this stuff, and I just sat there and I went, well, that kind of blows up your narrative just a little bit, doesn't it? Right?
Yeah.
You know? And the video I just recently did, like it's called the revolution will not be televised, right? And and I guess I gotta bring a little bit of light to this situation. And this goes beyond identity politics, man, woman, whatever. But one of the most beautiful things I've seen this year, guys, was in France, when I saw black men, white women, like everybody sitting there, you know, in like crouched down in front of these riot police, and they're fighting the lockdowns, they're fighting the vaccination, they're fighting everything that's happening right now with regards to COVID. And I thought, wow, you know, there's some serious unity there in France, at least on this front. If you can get that to happen in France, you know, and people start waking up, man. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, yeah, especially over there with the way they were going for a while with their politics. I don't know. Things are kind of changing a little bit though too. Obviously, it does seem like that in Europe. So some people are just getting fed up with the bullshit and the lies. But obviously, but yeah, I did want to mention one other thing though, that since we were talking about Canadians and and all that, if you guys are, if you are or not, Rich Cooper's a pretty big guy here on YouTube. He's in the manosphere, and I like a lot of his content. Some of the MGTOW guys don't, because they think they call him PUA or think he's a PUA, and I don't get into that type of shit. I mean, if somebody is spitting truth and good knowledge, then I'll take the knowledge. Whether, you know, I'm not out there dating, so I'm not using that part of what he talks about. But he had mentioned, from a Canadian's perspective, he was just laughing at Americans because he's like, you guys just voted for a guy that, if speaking of Biden, that you're getting ready to go on this 4-year road trip, but you out of all these cars you can pick, you decide to pick the car that has 500,000 miles, bald tires, one of the headlights is out, the brakes don't work, you know, and it just had me cracking up. Just his description of, you know, alluding to Joe Biden. Like, I mean, and it's true. I mean, I don't see how Biden's going to make it through the full term. I mean,
probably not.
Yeah. I mean, and if he somehow does, I mean, he'll be fucking 82 years old. But of course, I don't think he's going to make it to the term. But it's just a matter of when is he going to be out of there, and Harris going to take over. That's my opinion. But.
Right. So it's like you buy that old car, but you know you have another one that you're going to be able to lease here within a short period of time. But yeah, you know, a lot of it again was just about anti-Trump, anybody but Trump, and Biden. You know, he really didn't have a whole lot of challenge in the DNC race, especially in the long run. It looked like Sanders might actually have a chance to win, but didn't work out that way. The only way I could see Biden serving 4 years is if basically he doesn't have any of the responsibility in the first place. And, you know, he can take 2 or 3 naps throughout the day and, you know, basically not have to worry about any of the actual administration of the government. And Harris and the DNC will basically run everything, and whatever people he puts in his cabinet. Which is really a nightmare scenario as far as I'm concerned, but I could see that lasting for a while. You know, I don't know if that's worse or better than having Harris become president, because if the DNC itself runs the country, you're going to see more and more of this sort of dividing people up based on race and gender and all this kind of stuff. It's going to be more of the Marxist philosophy in action, because the party itself really represents that hardcore, in my opinion. So,
yeah. Well, and I had mentioned this in a recent video of mine that, I mean, in all honesty, I don't know. I don't see them getting much done. I don't think they're going to be able to push a lot of their shit through that they want to get done. But I hope I'm right, and you know, and not wrong with that. But I don't know. What do you guys think, or Dan? What do you think?
Well, as long as the Senate remains in GOP hands, then Yes, but that's pretty slim as it is. So you get couple of these guys that we call rhinos, who basically aren't conservative, but they're Republican. If they would vote for the Democrats on certain things, they could get some things through. It's going to be pretty tight as far as who has control of the Senate. And if it's a tie, Harris has the deciding vote if that's how it works out. If it's just down along party lines. But I don't know. The other optimistic thing or potentially optimistic thing is the Supreme Court makeup is more conservative now. So if there's something that is so draconian that the court can just strike it down, there's a possibility that could happen as well. So there are a couple things in there that you can be optimistic about, but a lot of it is just slowing down the decline, slowing down, how quickly people's rights are taken away and all that. I think even with Trump in office, I don't think he was going to be successful at a lot of the stuff that a lot of the people wanted Trump to do. So, it's just a matter of how long it takes before the collapse, basically. I guess that's not very optimistic, but.
Well, I think that they'll be able to get like corporate agenda type shit done, but anti-constitution shit, like any serious gun control, I don't think they'll be able to accomplish. But I think they'll be able to scare a lot of people into buying more guns and ammo and shit. But I don't know. I think there's enough resistance that they'll talk about it to appease their base, but I don't think they're going to push it as hard as they're hinting at. But again, I hope I'm right, not wrong on that. So,
well, and the other sort of problem with that is a lot of things can be done through executive order now too. So again, if you have Biden as the puppet, and the DNC basically says you're going to sign this executive order, but ultimately they don't have to pass everything through Congress, and so, like I say, some of it might end up being up to the Supreme Court to strike things down if things are too bad. But, how do you guys feel? I know that this is more of an American issue than a Canadian issue. So TVOR he may not care about this much, but how do you feel about the idea of replacing Ginsburg with another female court member? Like, when that first happened, and I remember basically how this came about. Trump said immediately when Ginsburg died that he was going to put a female as a replacement for her on the Supreme Court. And a lot of these people that think, well, Trump's going to fight against, all these things that are against men, and Trump's the red pill candidate or president. It's just like, to immediately say, I'm going to replace her with a woman, to me shows you that how much power and control women really have, even at that level. The thing is, I can't remember what her name is. Was it Barrett?
ACB, Amy Coney Barrett. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's a rock star. I'm just going to throw it out there. She's a rock star as far as I'm concerned. But anyways, go ahead.
Okay. I mean, the thing is, you've had different people, of course, both male and female, that have been appointed to the court who ended up basically, like John Roberts, for example. He's supposedly a conservative member of the court, and he votes to uphold something like Obamacare and stuff like that. My thing about that is, do you think a woman being put on the court is going to end up having own group preference, is going to end up basically ruling in a way that increases women's power? Or do you think that she'll remain conservative, and basically, if there's an issue that's related to feminism that's brought to the court, how do you think the female members of the court, like Barrett, will actually react to that? I think it's a limitation. I think and people can say this is sexist as much as they want, but if I had a man and a woman of equal credentials and they were both conservative as far as their judicial history, or, at the very least against what the left is doing, I would be more hesitant to put the woman in that position than the man, because I see men being less swayed by their emotions and not having that same kind of own group preference. So do you guys think that it makes a difference? Do you think there's a possibility that the conservatives don't have the support? And you look at something like, for example, abortion rights. A lot of conservatives are saying, well, now's the time that we're going to, basically repeal Roe v. Wade and all that. And it's like, do you think that someone like Barrett would actually support that? Or do you think there's a good chance that when it comes down to it, she's going to vote with the left on some of these issues?
Well, I think that's. I mean, I don't know much about it. Like I said, I just said she seemed like a rock star because there's a media blitz around her, so much media around her, and I think a lot of it, was done for optics, and that's kind of what I saw from up here. I mean, female to female, right? That kind of thing. But and if you're doing something for optics, are you doing it for the right reasons? I guess. I think that she's very intelligent from what I've seen of her.
Yeah.
I think she destroyed the sessions that she was involved in when people, the whole meme that's out there with the empty notepad. Like, what do you, when the dude asked, what do you got in your notes? What are you reading from? And she, that coy little smile, and she's holding up the blank notepad, and people are like, and he's like, oh, that's very impressive, right? She's obviously got, some sort of a mind that warrants, in my opinion, at least, obviously to some degree being there.
Yeah.
But when it comes, and look at her family makeup, guys. That's what I saw. We got 2 black kids, right? I think they were adopted. We got, however many that she gave birth to, 4 or 5 kids, white kids. Obviously she's got her husband, whatever. I mean, I wouldn't personally. I'll just say I wouldn't want to be the husband in that situation. I feel like, to me, it just seems kind of out of whack. But whatever. Because she seems to wear the pants. She's walking in front of them, as they're filming and stuff. But just that whole thing, it wouldn't sit well with me. But I think that you make some really solid points when it comes to things about in-group preference, because I think that there's always something deep down that when it comes to in-group preference and females, what is it that Rollo used to say, Rollo Tomasi, the sisterhood uber allies, right? So when it comes down to it, if it's female, it's good for females, will this be the pattern, and will she choose that over anything else? And I would say, wait and see, but I always lean towards yes.
Yeah, that's the thing about the whole process with the Supreme Court, because it's going to be up to them. Even now, they're kind of deciding the election, supposedly, which I don't think there's a whole lot they can actually do to help Trump win the election. I think we'll see what kind of arguments are presented, of course, but you're going to have solid evidence to throw out tens of thousands of ballots. But that issue aside, it's just, I've seen some of these court members. I think Sandra Day O'Connor was criticized for that because she was put on the court as supposedly a conservative candidate by Reagan, or not a candidate, but member of the court. And she ended up being kind of a swing vote because she was sort of just middle of the road. And I don't know how much, I haven't looked at that for a while, but I don't know how much they kind of knew that she would be that candidate or that sort of representative court member, or whether they kind of thought she would be a lot more conservative with some of her rulings than she actually was. So, that concerns me a little bit, but maybe the court is far enough to the right now that with Biden and probably Harris later on in there, they're not going to be like, some things may get struck down if they're too extreme, and that may prevent them from doing a lot of what they want to do with their agenda. But hopefully it didn't even get that far, because the Senate doesn't allow certain legislation to go through either. But a lot of it is done at the executive level now. And, you know.
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just saying that is the scary part with these. I completely forgot about the executive order shit before I said my comment earlier. So, yeah, that is the scary part, because it seems like a lot of those executive orders are not challenged, unfortunately.
Right. That's the way it's been for, several presidencies now. It's just continuing to get more that way, where the president has more power than the other branches. But that's kind of a different topic, I guess. But now that Biden's in there, I guess, that becomes more relevant as far as whatever it is that we're going to have to deal with in the future.
See, and I'm just going to interject here, and I'm one of these crazy guys that actually think Trump is still going to be your president. Looking at the information that I see, just some of the background stuff that's going on, the things that he can invoke, the things that he can do, the reason why he set up these supposed, ACB, he's put in 3 supposedly, conservative judges, so that you've got you've got the numbers, right?
Right, theoretically, yeah. I'm one of those guys that actually believes, and I've seen the case assignments. And now keep in mind, guys,
Clarence Thomas, if you guys look back, what was it, 30 years ago when he was being confirmed? Remember the whole pubic hair on the Coke can thing, the sexual stuff? Okay,
Yeah.
but who was the guy that was asking those questions? And who was the guy that was doing all this shit? It was Joe Mofo Biden. So, and I remember seeing a clip, I don't know, a year ago, and Clarence Thomas is just sitting there looking at him, and he's going, I know that he doesn't know what he's talking about. And it's kind of like this game that I've got to go through these people that don't know what the hell they're talking about. Right. And I think back to that, I'm like, man, this just might be Clarence Thomas's sweet revenge. I don't know. But I mean, I'm holding hope out and, that it's going to be a Trump presidency. I think there might have been, I think there was massive. We're talking about guys, the Germany servers that are getting raided. Why are your votes being counted up there? Why are they even online? Why? And there's all these different things they're saying, oh, they switched here, like in the millions. They're talking like 10 million up and 7 million down. And so I say wait and see. I think there's going to be, there's still a bit of a road yet left. I don't think Biden is your president. But even after all of that, and I've always said this, I agree with what Dan was saying earlier, which is this. You got about 4 more years, even if he is. And you know what? The left is going to become completely unhinged. Even if he's in there, it's going to, become the divided states of America, if you guys aren't already, based on that. And it's going to be hell in a lot of ways. So prepare yourself, I guess, right?
Well, that was one of the reasons why I made sort of my initial run of election videos, is because I was motivated by people saying, well, Trump's going to win in a landslide. And it's just like, I would sit there and look at the polls and be like, okay, this doesn't look like 2016 because Hillary was not up 6 or 8 points in these polls. And the polls ended up being wrong, of course. But at the same time, I was trying to kind of warn people that, hey, I don't think I would be that confident that Trump's going to win this election, because you need to prepare for if Biden wins. Most of the evidence looked like to me like Trump wasn't going to win. And the election ended up being really close, but and you could argue, people can say, well, if it weren't for fraud, Trump would have won. But at the same time, Biden has like a full percentage point lead in Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin's just under 1%. So I think what the Supreme Court would have to do is say, you will throw these tens, if not hundreds of thousands of ballots out and do a recount. That's the only way that I could see Trump, these states actually flipping to Trump. Is because a lot of it is about whether or not the recount will give you a different result. I think in Georgia and Arizona, it was close enough that if they would throw out certain votes, those states could flip, but that wouldn't be enough in themselves. So my take on it is, the election was close, and you could argue about whether cheating gave the edge to Trump or not, but I don't see how he's going to win now. Or I'm sorry, gave the edge to Biden over Trump. But I don't see how Trump's going to win his case. A lot of people seem to have, just to finish that point, this idea that in 2000, when the Supreme Court decided the election in favor of Bush, that the Supreme Court just gave the election to Bush. That's never what happened. What happened was they basically said, you will be done counting votes at this certain point. Bush has won because he's ahead in the voting. They had to do the recounts and stuff to even get to that point. So I don't see it being the same type of thing. I think that Biden has, a lead of tens of thousands of votes in Pennsylvania and in Wisconsin. So they could do the recount, but unless they throw all of those votes out, enough to actually switch things, I think there's basically no chance that Biden doesn't win. The only thing you could hope is that the Electoral College basically says this is too messed up and we're not going to vote for Biden. But I honestly think there's very little chance of that. I think the Electoral College will vote for Biden, and we're screwed. I hate to put it that way, but
And to your point, sorry, Dan, but I just wanted to add to your point, brother. I looked at the numbers in the states, the 6 or 8 states, and there's an infographic of it showing how Trump led in all those battleground states up until a point when they all decided to just go home. See, and that's where the problem is, right? The problem is that he had a very large lead with, like, in some of these states, we're talking like the last 10 percentile of votes was left. So we're talking the 90% reporting or 95% reporting. And all of a sudden, I mean, when has this ever happened where you have just people go home and all of a sudden the amount that was needed flipped over in all of those states? He literally was leading all of those battleground states up until whatever point when the vote should have been cut off. And that's kind of what I'm going with here is I really do believe that there is some seriously bad juju going on there. However he's going to do it, he's a smart man. I feel like, like I said, watch and see, but I don't think it's President-elect Biden. I don't think Biden's getting in there. That's just my that's just my thing.
Well, Eddie MGTOW in the comments had a good point about the recounts. I agree with his comment. He says a recount doesn't do anything. Audits are needed. And to me that makes sense, because if they just do a recount, then they're going to count all the fucking, if there are illegal votes, they're just going to be recounting all the illegal votes. So I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, how do you separate the illegal votes out from the ones that are legal? That's going to be the really difficult part with that. Yeah. So, they may be able to, like I say, determine that some of them are not valid votes, but I don't really see that happening. Maybe they'll throw some of them out, but it's going to take a lot to swing those key states, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. It's going to take a lot to swing those back to Trump. I remember the election night, and I think Reverend, you were watching the Heartburn stream on election night too, weren't you? Yeah, it looked like at the end, by the time that stream was over, it looked like there was a pretty good chance Trump had won. But I remember looking at Pennsylvania after that in the middle of the night, and this explains part of it. I'm not saying that cheating didn't take place, but I remember looking at Pennsylvania, and Trump, his lead had narrowed to like 2 or 3 percentage points. And I was looking at the map of Pennsylvania that showed where the votes came in. And most of the rural areas, the rural counties, were reporting at 100% or close to it. And then I looked at Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, and they were at like below 50%, most of those counties. And I thought, oh, shit. Because when those urban areas come in, that's going to change this. And I didn't realize how it would completely swing it the other way. And maybe cheating and fraud did occur through this process. I'm not saying it didn't. But I think what happened was these areas that had really high populations, it took them forever to count their mail-in ballots. And I think Pennsylvania didn't even start counting the mail-ins until after the polls closed. In Ohio, it wasn't that way. In Ohio, they started counting them at the beginning of the day, so it didn't take so long to start counting those votes. But in those areas with really high populations, if you've got, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, I don't know how many per precinct of votes to read, that's going to take a long time. So that's part of what happened. I'm not saying that there was no cheating and no fraud, but it looked to me like the urban areas took longer to report their votes. And of course, all the people that live in these big cities, not literally all of them, but the vast majority, vote Democrat. They're going to vote for big government. They're going to vote left. And so once those votes really started to come in, that's one of the reasons things shifted. Not saying that there was no shady stuff that occurred, but that was a big part of it. Like, people just thought, well, Trump's way ahead. But then if the Philly votes haven't been counted and the Pittsburgh votes haven't been counted, then you're missing a lot of those votes that are going to vote Democratic.
Yeah, I can agree with you on that one, Dan. I mean, you could be absolutely correct about that. And I just actually shared, I'm not sure if you can see it, but I did share a copy of what I was looking at there from the night of, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Georgia, North Carolina, and Wisconsin. It looks like Michigan was doubled, but just showing how many polls were reporting in and what the leads were in those states. I'm not sure if you can see it, but you could very well be correct about that. And I wouldn't be surprised if you were that some of those major centers are the last ones counted, or some of those mail-in ballots are the last ones counted. You could absolutely be correct about that.
Right, and they could have just thrown some votes in for Biden through that whole process as well. But one point that I want to definitely make with a lot of the stuff that's going on with cheating and fraud and how people are trying to assess how much of an effect that had on the election. Did it completely throw the election, or was it just sort of a more subtle effect? One thing that I think people need to really sort of unify on is we have to, if you don't want this kind of thing to happen over and over again, we must get rid of the mail-in ballots. We cannot have people voting this way because, and even before this election, there were a lot of people that voted absentee before election day. You've got to get rid of all that shit if you don't want this to happen over and over, because people could just, all you have to do is, find a ballot and mail it in. They don't have no idea who actually filled out the ballot. some of the signatures don't even match, but probably because they weren't actually cast by the person that was supposed to get the ballot. So as long as we have mail-in voting, this is going to happen. It's just a matter of how much fraud there's going to be with this. If you don't want this to continue, you have to insist on in-person voting, in my opinion.
Yeah, totally agree with you, 100%. Show me your ID, and that's what we do here in Canada. You show up with your ID, you do it on a piece of paper. That's that. I mean, there are questions up here now with Dominion and the whole thing because they're there's a center here and they were tied to like a major leftist, and maybe Soros and a bunch of other stuff. I won't go that far with it, but the fact is like we can't be doing where things can be manipulated. Internet, mail. I mean, if you can't show up, you can't go there and do it. Then too bad. Show up with your ID.
Yep. Unless you have a legit verifiable reason why you can't go, be it medical or you're out overseas in the military or something like that. But no, I completely agree with voting in person and an ID. I mean, I never understood the Democrats' argument or the majority Democrat argument that against voter ID, and I don't mean voter ID, but showing an ID when when you show up at the polls. It just completely doesn't make sense to me. Other than if you were wanting to commit fraud, you wouldn't want people to show their ID.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, and a lot of it, I think, and this is really the same thing, but for the people that don't have much awareness of what's going on politically, they're also less likely to have an ID, I think, because, the people that are actually trying to say, all right, I need to have an ID, that's reasonable because I take voting seriously and I do some research and whatnot. You're probably going to vote not Democrat. If you figure that out, if you are that dedicated to it, you're more likely to reject what the Democratic Party's platform believes, in my view. But whereas if you're just a dipshit and you have an IQ of 75 and you want to sit here and just have everything given to you, you're more likely to fill out a ballot for Biden. You're more likely to sit here at home, fill out the ballot, and mail it. I hate to be that cynical about it, but that's what a lot of it is. I think is you want the dumbed down people to vote if you want the Democrats to win.
Well, even the Corona Chan virus aside, I mean, it's got it. I mean, I don't vote by mail, but I'm assuming it's way fucking easier than getting your ass off the couch and actually going to the polls.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Good for lazy people.
Right. I mean, that's just kind of what it boils down to, or part of what it boils down to in terms of convenience. And it's like, again, that's why you saw all these people at the Trump rallies, because they were voting for Trump. A lot of the people that basically sat on their ass and stayed home and just mailed it in, they're just going to think orange man bad because they're more likely to just watch TV and believe whatever they're told. I mean, I'm sure that that's not true in every case, but in a very general sense, it probably tends more in that direction, I think.
True.
Craziness to come. We'll see what happens. That's all I'm going to say. Craziness to come.
Well, another factor with all of this is you look back at the 2016 election, of course, and you had all these protests when Trump won. Legitimately won. Like, with no question, he beat Hillary Clinton because he won in these tight battleground states. I think, again, a lot of people know, a lot of the leaders know, and this goes back to what I mentioned with the coronavirus to an extent, with manipulating stupid people to get them to do what you want them to do. A lot of people realize that if Biden wins, as it stands now, most conservatives won't do much of anything. They may protest, they may organize more to an extent, but they're not going to go out and try to overthrow society or overthrow the government. If the Supreme Court and the state election boards or whatever would redo certain elections, or they'd throw out certain votes and flip those states over to Trump, do you know what the left would do? There would be an attempted revolution. Like, I think that's not an exaggeration. Like, they would go absolutely nuts, and they don't want that. So it's easier to just not resist the results of this and vote for Biden-Harris.
On the communist bus, getting the socialist bus, and then you'll never get a Republican president again. Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%, brother. I think that, and I mentioned that in one of my videos with pre-election. I just said, look, And this is telling too. And this is what I said. It's what's telling about this is the fact that, if Trump does get in there, however, even still, if he still does, the left is going to lose it. And it's going to be, those are the people that are going to be doing this, or supposedly the left. Who knows? I mean, they could be paid actors. They could be paid Antifa. I don't know. But the whole point is like, look, there will be damage done. There will be, things are going to happen. If the right loses, I said, the Trump side loses, they're just going to go home. And that tells you a lot about the difference in mentality and the differences between, a reactive set of people who are probably lower IQ versus the higher IQ people who don't necessarily want the violence, but, can introspect or look outward and think about other things and just kind of move on, I guess.
Yeah. But they just don't have the moral constraints on the left that you do with people on the right. Conservatives still don't really want to get their hands dirty if they don't have to. And people on the left don't care. They prefer to get their hands dirty if they can get away with it. So, it's not, of course, universally true. I'm not saying everybody that's left of center is that way, and that there aren't people on the far right who would be glad to, fight directly in that sense. But for the most part, it's just like, if they would somehow flip the election to Trump, the Supreme Court or the states or whatever combination that would take, which again, I think is very unlikely personally, there would be absolute chaos. There would be an attempt to have a Bolshevik-like response to all of it, probably.
Oh yeah.
I don't know what the end result would be, but there's a desire to avoid that among a lot of our leaders. I think they are not willing to stand up against that.
Agreed. I did want to at least cover one more thing that Dan you sent out in the email when we had our topic discussion points email chain, which is related to what both you guys were just talking about, the growing chasm between the left and the right. And then also TVOR, you were saying that, I think these are related, that even should Trump get in office, we're just buying more time, it just buys us a few more years. Because I think, my personal view is we are on the United States, the West in general, but especially the United States we're on the downslope. You just need to get ready to, in my opinion, to accept that the United States as a dominant country and empire is done. And the sooner that you accept that, the better off you'll be able to understand reality and deal with the future. But that's what I'm saying. It kind of goes with maybe I didn't explain it right, but the growing left-right divide and then buying more time, so to speak.
Yeah, I totally agree with that 100%, Reverend. 100%. Your sentiments are bang on, brother. It is, every Rome has their denouement, and I think this is, you're getting closer and closer to it. I really do believe that, and I think it's no different than up here. And keep in mind, guys. People always say, well, fight for your country, fight this and that, da 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 da. And I often say, not my monkeys, not my zoo. Although this is, pissing me off quite a bit here. But my whole intent was to move to Southeast Asia for a lot of reasons, and I'm not going to get into all of them, but just save it to say that because there are some things there that they're a bit more resistant to, and they've been around for a little bit longer, maybe some of these societies and cultures, and maybe I'm a foreigner to that culture, but there's some things I can respect in keeping like familial piety, and I think that as a base, familial piety in a lot of these different situations, Confucianism, all these different kind of things, these systems in place, can keep your society a little bit more stable. And I look at our societies where we have freedom and all these other different things happening here. And I don't know. It's just a weird situation. And I don't recognize this country anymore at all. Yeah. And it's only been 20 years. It's only been 20 years since I recognized. It's been 20 years since I recognized it, which is crazy.
Yeah.
I wanted to quickly address something that Eddie MGTOW was saying in the comments. Sure. I think he made an incorrect assumption about what I was saying. He said people with Dan's thinking are why we're in the mess we're in. Oh, no, we don't want that. Let's not go there. I'm not saying that that's my thought process. What I'm saying is that most of our leaders have that process. And a lot of the people in the country, especially a lot of conservatives, that's their process. It's just we'd rather not do anything than stand up against what we're seeing. Or like I say, for our leaders themselves, it's just we don't want to basically flip these states over to Trump, because if we do that, there could be a revolution against it. So I'm being descriptive. I'm not saying that's how it should be. That's just, I think, pretty much where we are when it comes to the majority of our leadership. So no, that's not my position. I don't think that it's good to sit back and let all this happen, but that's pretty much my opinion on it and what I see going on, at least.
Yeah, no, and well, this is somewhat related too. It's even with, and then Eddie commented about you being pessimistic. I mean, I don't see it as pessimism. I see it as realism. You know, you can, I mean, shoot, I hope I'm wrong. I hope the United States is dominant and on top for 1,000 more years. But history tells us that that's not what's going to happen. Plus, what I see every day out in the streets and online, it doesn't look good for us, and to me at least.
Well, and a lot of it goes back to what you were saying. I can't remember. I think it was in your latest video, Rev, where when you discover one form of red pill knowledge, that tends to lead to having kind of an overall, you learn about other things easier in terms of determining the reality behind different situations. So if you go MGTOW and you take that red pill, you're more likely to see a lot of what's going on in the political system as well, and those kinds of things. Yeah. And you know, once you get to a point with all this, if you don't become black pilled, like a lot of us have, you realize the things that would need to change in order to get society back on the right path. You'd have to get rid of no-fault divorce. You would have to pay for trillions of dollars in the United States of excess spending.
Yeah.
You'd have to do so many things that to even begin to do that in the current system, it's almost impossible. And maybe that's pessimistic, but to actually get things back on the right track without society basically collapsing, I don't see how it can be done. Maybe that's pessimistic and maybe it's not, but.
Well, I don't think so, based upon what you're saying, but that's the great thing about MGTOW is, and red pill stuff is seeing it just because the United States ends, or whether it does or not, that doesn't mean life's over. I mean, no. we still, I mean, there's still great shit out there, still things we can do. I'm still making plans. I'm planning a 2-week trip later this year where I'm going to head out to New Mexico, Colorado, and Utah. In Colorado, I'm going to do some recon, do some bunch of hiking. But I mean, I'm still making plans, still planning on doing shit. Regardless of what happens with the election and the United States in general. But I am making contingency plans and preparing for the worst should that happen. But at the same time, I'm planning on living my life, you know, and MGTOW is part of that. So.
Right. That provides part of the framework. I understand what you mean. You know, in that essay that you're talking about from John Glubb, Sir John Glubb, I think that was his name, about the fall of nations and whatnot. One of the things that he mentions that is at the core of what seems to happen when things start to really unwind is that people no longer are willing to sacrifice for their country. They put themselves first. They don't care about society and stuff like that anymore. And one thing that I thought about the whole time I was reading that was what happens in society that leads to that point? Is it just that people are selfish, or is it more that society itself turns against the people that built that foundation, that built that civilization? And then once society turns against you, like what we see with MGTOW and all this, it's like, well, it makes no sense to invest in that society anymore. It makes no sense to get married and have kids. It makes no sense to, you know, care about whether what you do is approved as a so-called real man and all that kind of stuff. It's like, you can say people should be more self-sacrificing, but not if it's to something that is going to stab you in the back later on. So I think that's one of the key parts to that as well, is that once you get to this point and the good people who are left in society, no longer have any sort of incentive to sacrifice for that society, we just move on to other things. We find what's important to us, the relationships, the things we want to do, and we just don't invest highly in that society anymore. We just basically say, screw it. It makes no sense to care about the well-being of something that basically wants to exploit us. And we just focus on basically going our own way in some form or manner instead. And yeah, there's no willingness to sacrifice for your society, but why would you under these circumstances? So I didn't see Glub get into that part of it so much. He described that that's the end result, but I think it's important to look at why you reached that point in the first place when there is no more incentive to care about society in that kind of way.
Yeah, I think he just covered the and well, like you mentioned in one of your videos, he kind of just went with historical dates and kind of an overview, but
Right.
whether the dates line up exactly right or not, I do think it's an interesting essay.
Yeah, I agreed with the cycle that he described and all that totally, but I kind of disagree that there's a set timetable, and I think, he mentioned that it doesn't seem to matter what type of government you have, but I'm not sure if that's true, because again, if you look at why we're at where we're at in our society today, a lot of it is because you just basically make it to where the average person just wants to basically exploit the good people who are left. And maybe that would happen in any system, I don't know. But with a democracy, it's like you just manipulate society until the average person, like I say, just wants free stuff, and they don't really care about a sense of helping each other out and whatnot. It's just about everybody doing their own thing. And then the good people who are left, they have no incentive to sacrifice either, because they're just going to get used up. So I don't know. Those were a couple of my related thoughts to that.
Right on. Well, and also similar to the society and as far as the walking away perspective, I don't really know exactly. I don't have any good advice as far as how to do this, but Vench and MGTOW and Hammerhand have both mentioned about minimizing taxes, your personal taxes on yourself, and
Right.
And that's something that I am going to explore further as far as not contributing to a society that doesn't give a shit about me other than what I can provide for it.
Right. There's no honor, there's no glory to win anymore in being a so-called real man and trying to go through that process, whether it's in terms of your relationships or in terms of your society or your country as a whole. It's like there are people and things that you should care about still, but why in the world, no matter how good of a person you are, why in the world should you let yourself be exploited like that? That's something I think that's part of the problem that we can't fix. In terms of trying to set things back on the right track, it's like, as long as good people are just treated this way in general, you're not going to fix anything really. Like there's no incentive to.
Yeah. See, and that's where I'm starting too, guys, here in my society. I've got major conflict in my mind right now. When I think about not my monkeys, not my zoo, that I often say in my videos, and how I don't want to be exploited and how I'd never have a child in this country because of the exploitative nature of our courts, family court system and everything else on one hand, but on the other hand, I'm sitting here going, but I'm also living in a communist takeover, and anywhere I go or anywhere I was planning to go, plans, right? All these plans that I had, they're kind of fucked, because it's like, well, now you're going to go to a place that's probably even worse. Like you can't go to Vietnam. I mean, these people they're getting locked down in their homes. They're masked and this and that. Like you can't go there. Can't go to. I mean, I could go to Thailand maybe, but they're having some revolutionary things going on there too, which is good, I guess, right? I don't know. It's just I'm kind of conflicted on this now, and I'm at a point where I don't know. I personally am not going to make myself a personal slave to a court system or to a woman or to any of that situation. That's out the window. That flew out the window a long time ago when I, discovered a long time ago what was happening to men. So Where do I go from here with my wants and desires? Where do I go next? Do I stand up and fight for the same system that hates me, but then do I live under personal communism, or do I trade that for communism overseas? Like, I don't know, man. It's all fucked up.
Yeah, there's definitely no easy answer. That's for sure. I've even, I don't know. I don't know what the long-term future holds for myself, but I have thought about expatting, but at the same time, kind of with what you just said, TVOR, where do you go? You know, I mean, that's better, or you're not going to encounter the same problems ultimately.
Well, and being in a state where you're at, where the left is a lot weaker than in other parts of the country, you probably have more of a incentives to stay. Like, it's not as bad as if you lived in California or, you know, Ohio is sort of in between the extremes. Obviously, we voted for Trump twice at least. So, but, you know, you have to, of course, account for what's going on in the world and account for what's going on in society. But I think the mindset is different. Like I say, once you get to a point where you realize there's no reason to sacrifice for this society at all. There's no reason to care about its opinion of you, because the more you do for it, it doesn't matter. As soon as you're no longer useful, they'll just cast you aside anyway. So, you know, what, both in terms of relationships and in terms of productivity and everything else, it's just about what you can do for them now. So, you know, yeah, you definitely have to assess what's going on around you. And at some point we may have to stand up against it, you know, in a way that's, you know, I don't want to get the stream banned, but, you know, in a way that's basically, you know, direct. But, you know, at the same time, that's not really working within the system. That's standing up against it too. So there may come a time where we can or need to do that. But I think for now, in general, it just makes sense to basically live for ourselves and live for the people and the things that we can have a positive effect on. And to a large extent, I don't think we can help the system a whole lot. Even if we wanted to, we're not going to change a whole lot. You know, look at the men's rights activists and stuff trying to change the family courts and whatnot. Maybe someday they'll have some success, but I'm not counting on it. So you end up in those situations, I think, where you have to just look at other things beyond what your society thinks of you. And once you get to that point where more and more of the decent people that are left do that, there's just nothing. You see this with socialism and other forms of Marxism. There's just no more money. There's nothing left to be had that you can take advantage of, because those people are just done. They go their own way in some sense, or they join the bad people. And I'm not suggesting we should do that, but you end up basically finding your own path. You end up finding what's important to you aside from all that shit. And at that point, society is going to come unraveled. It's inevitable, because there's no decent people left to hold it together.
Yep.
Good point.
Yep. Very good point.
Well, I'm getting close to running out of my phone charge life. These fucking new phones, man, the way they're designed, unless there's something I'm not tracking on. I got one of these newer Samsungs to where you can't take the battery out and replace it. So I think they do that on purpose, so they eventually force you to buy a new phone. But
yeah,
but I'm down to about 20%. I can still go for a little bit longer, but you guys want to wrap it up on like one final topic, or what do you think?
We have about 18 minutes left till we reach the 2-hour mark anyway. So,
sure.
I don't know what that topic would be though.
Well, I was just curious. Yeah, in kind of closing and maybe related to what we've been talking about is as far as the future and everything. What do you guys see with MGTOW and Red Pill next year as far as 2021? Any thoughts on that?
Yep, that's what I was going to say too, Reverend. I was going to go with that. You know what? I honestly don't. I think that with the lack of financial security that everybody's going to be experiencing going forward, I think we're going to see a hell of a lot more desperation in women. I really do. I'm starting to notice it now, just for attention. Maybe they haven't, they're not going anywhere. They're locked down. They got to wear these stupid face masks or these shields. I've noticed that, even an old fat guy like me, pretty blonde girls are kind of, starting to go, and starting to talk to me and stuff. And I'm like, this is problematic. I don't get it. Why all of a sudden, right? But no, I think that we're going to see more desperation, a lot more desperation when it comes to women. And I think that they're going to continue to try everything in their power to hook you in, as far as taking care of them, and whether that's financially or whatever. And poon season will be open. I think from that perspective, that's what I'm thinking, at least on that topic.
Yeah, it's like in some ways there's going to be more of an opportunity for men and people in general to see a lot of the stuff that's going on. But then at the same time, a lot of it depends on exactly how events take place. We never perceived that this whole virus stuff was going to happen this year. And, it's hard to tell what's going to happen next year that's unexpected. But yeah, I think women are going to retreat. You're going to see a lot more women against feminism because they're going to have to rely more on either the state, which again, if they do that, maybe they don't have to be against feminism. But if they're relying on other men in their lives to do things for them, which I think most women are to an extent at least, you're going to have, more of this sort of retreat away from feminism and more toward, oh, we love our men and all this kind of stuff. But, will more men see through this, or will men get, kind of trapped back into this? I don't know exactly. I don't know if I have a prediction for that, really, how it's going to turn out. I think that in terms of some of the stuff that we see, a lot of people assume that now if Trump doesn't get back in office, that things will die down in terms of the political divisions. I don't think that will happen. I think it'll probably actually get worse because that's what the left wants to do. And now that they have more power, you're just going to see more of that. But I don't know. So aside from that, I don't know if I have too many predictions for 2021.
Yeah, I guess for me, at least in the MGTOW and the red pill vein, I want to echo some of the people in the comments. I think for sure we're just going to see more censorship, and at least with red pillars and MGTOW, because I see more and more people, or I hear about more and more people waking up. And as an example, Dan, you talked about you were listening to Sports Center or something like that, and the guy talked. He almost went there with talking about the wall, but
that was on a radio program.
Yeah. It's actually kind of funny with the sports thing. I listen to more sports radio than actually sports that I watch. I really don't watch sports anymore, but I kind of like the sports radio from the leadership's like another topic that I'm interested in, because having to lead troops and deal with managing people and shit. But and I find that sports angle kind of interesting, like baseball managers and football coaches. But
right.
That aside, though, it's just kind of funny that they that comparison about that I can't remember his name, but that particular player, and then
James Harden, basketball player.
Yeah, James Harden, and then that Father Time catches up to us all in being related to women. So.
Yeah, just to kind of briefly go over that, the radio announcer, the sportscaster, or whatever you want to call him, was saying that a lot of these athletes that are super talented to start off with don't develop themselves in life and even in their sport in terms of their skills, because they can just rely on their natural talent for so long. Then as they start to get older, that natural talent is not enough for them to continue to be part of a team. And they was saying, the sportscaster was saying, Harden and Des Bryant, who's a football wide receiver, they're examples of that, because they can't really get along with their teammates well. They're not good in the locker room. They haven't added to their skills. They just relied on their talent for so long until they burn out on it. And then really they have a hard time even getting on a team anymore. And he was comparing that to girls. He was saying, it's just like one of these women that's exceptionally beautiful that is able to get by with her beauty as, her youth is still there. But then as soon as that starts to fade and she starts to get older, and he's basically stopped and just said, well, Father Time catches up with all of us. That's all I'll say with it. And I swear it sounded like he was going to say, the wall waits for no one, or something like that. I mean, it would have, I don't know whether he's seen red pill content and stuff like that, but it sounded to me like, he was going to say, and I was just like sitting there driving with my mouth open, like, wow, I can't believe that he even mentioned that. And I hope that his job security is still there. And women don't call in and complain about the show or whatever, but it's just like, I would say that's not even the most beautiful women. I'd say even your average women can do that for a long time. And then they don't really have a desirable personality and nobody wants to be with them. once their looks start to fade. But that was the analogy. Yeah. It surprised me to hear that on a mainstream radio program.
Well, that's I don't know. I mean, that's what you mentioned, Dan, and heard it. I mean, I'm seeing more and more of that though with mainstream in actually mainstream media. You know, the red pill or MGTOW lingo somehow bleeding through, or people are simp and cuck and all these other words we've been using for years is becoming a little bit more mainstream.
Yeah, it seems like that. I don't know that the level of knowledge in terms of why. Well, I mean, there's knowledge inherent in just even saying something like that. But in terms of familiarity with MGTOW and all that, I don't know how much of that is there, but it does seem like more of it is bleeding into sort of the mainstream conversation. Yeah.
Well, and then young people, I don't know. I do think a part of it though is young people are really aware of a lot. I think a lot more young people than even MGTOW guys might think are know what MGTOW is and understand what it is. Because there's a guy that I a preparedness YouTuber I follow, Pastor Joe Fox. He's a Hebrew Israelite guy, but he was talking about his congregation. He made a video about MGTOW. It's not pro MGTOW, but that's a separate issue. But he had talked about his congregation and how they're all in most of them are in their 30s and younger, and he didn't know what the hell MGTOW was, and every single one of them did. So that it's kind of interesting, and there's quite a few other young people I've ran into in real life. They may not know my content or TVOR or Dan or Hammerhands, but they've heard of MGTOW. So
yeah.
And to your point, Reverend, I was just going to say, as a kind of a topic of discussion, or in addition to it, what do you guys see? I mean, do you guys see that, more explosive growth as we go along, as we see more censorship, more men losing their jobs, more men that are sitting there and going, they have this sort of Damocles hanging over their head because you can't say something to Sally from HR, or you might go to HR, you got to walk on eggshells. I mean, you basically got to be the guy that I was in my 30s when I just said, fuck it, I'm out. How many guys are going to go, okay, and especially with the ramped up financial constraints that we're all going to be living in, we're going to be people losing their houses, they're, all this other shit, female nature is going to ramp up to 12. How many more men are going to go MGTOW? And I think that to me, the answer is it's going to continue. It's going to increase.
Yeah, I agree. Whether it ever goes mainstream or is covered on NBC News or whatever, I mean, that doesn't matter. That's the whole point of what I'm doing. I'm as far as with the YouTube stuff and the content that I make and people I talk to, I just want guys to have the knowledge that I didn't have growing up, and to have that option. You still want to date women, you still want to get fucking married, okay, whatever. But at least know what you're doing before you go into it. So that's kind of my whole purpose.
Yeah, there is sort of a concern, of course, on how bad the censorship might get in the United States as far as even YouTube and stuff like that. Some of these sort of immunity that some of the major media companies have had toward, if this person expresses a view on our site, then we don't really endorse it. We don't have liability related to that. I think there's part of that could go away. It might be part of the federal code. I don't remember what the law actually was, but there's a lot of concern that if Biden becomes president, a lot of that will go away. And then that'll kind of give YouTube even more of a reason to axe channels and stuff like that. So if all that gets worse, then it's going to be harder to reach a lot of new people at the same time in any sort of direct sense. But there's also, the kind of iceberg effect with the manosphere where, in MGTOW in particular, where it doesn't really matter how much ice is floating on top necessarily, like what, that would represent the MGTOW community online. What matters is what's underneath, how many people are adopting those ideas and principles, just looking at what's going on in the world around them and doing their own assessment and essentially going MGTOW, whether they've even heard of what MGTOW stands for and all that. So that's the other part of it. You don't have to necessarily be formally introduced to these ideas. You can just look around you and see, okay, these women are wearing hats that represent their genitalia and demanding more special privileges when they already have equal rights. And these women over here are screwing some other man over in family law court and not letting them see their kids. And, over here we learn about the wage gap, but yet I'm struggling or whatever to just as a man to just do your own thing and support yourself. And then we're hearing about how everybody's sexist against women, but yet women don't have any gender roles and men are still held up to the same standards. It's like you can figure this out without formally learning about MGTOW. So there is that hope, I think, is if things continue to be not good for men in relationships and whatnot, and society treats them like shit in general, then more men are going to figure out, especially the more intelligent guys, the more perceptive guys, they're going to figure out that this isn't in their best interest, and they're going to walk away from that sort of conventional path, I think. So there's a mix of different things, and things could go a lot of different ways, I think. But
I agree with you, Dan. I don't think MGTOW has to recruit. MGTOW just does not have to recruit, and you don't even have to call it by the acronym. I mean, you know, men were logical creatures for the most part. Some of us, more of us are than not, I would say. We'll figure it out. I mean, maybe you gotta put your hand on the stove a couple times, and that's okay. I understand, but you know, there's alt tech out there too, guys. I mean, look, BitChute. I just celebrated my 2nd year on BitChute. Yeah, my audience is a lot smaller, but BitChute's almost at 100% of their funding goal. Okay, there's always gonna be another platform. I looked at D Live last night. I'm on Parler. I'll use that when I get yanked from Twitter. You know what I mean? Like, you know, Reddit, the Reddit forums. Yeah, they're quarantined, this and that, but so much red pill knowledge. We've got our own forums. I mean, I've been part of a forum that I helped set up, goingyourownway.com, and it's kind of dead now, but it's, you know, it started off 6 years ago or whatever, and you know, there's the independentman.org where I'm a creator of. There's tons of forums for men to seek out that knowledge, and all it takes is a search. You know, if it doesn't have to be Google, it can be. There's always going to be ways to find the content. But again, as you mentioned, Dan, we don't have to. You know, we don't have to. It's just going to become obvious, and it becomes more obvious because why? Because we have these devices in front of us that show us female nature and every other thing that's going on right in front of us. So there it is. There's a red pill right there.
Right on. Well, regardless of the censorship, I completely agree. We're going to in YouTube, or if YouTube somehow purges all MGTOW content, we'll just continue on other platforms. So 100% agree on that. I mean, the only downside being that YouTube is the currently the largest one, but YouTube could go the way of MySpace, and then they keep fucking around, and then BitChute will be the big one, or somebody else. So, but we're approaching up close to that 2-hour mark, and I did want to ask TVOR though, with it being your birthday, you got any other plans for the day, or you're gonna go kick it up, or just chill out?
You know, I was gaming last night. I was playing NHL 20 because it's free on EA Game Pass. I got the Xbox Series X. That was my birthday gift to myself. It's a pretty dope machine. I got myself a pizza because I can't go to the stores here anymore. You know, I was actually going to go to the store and pick up a bottle of cognac, and I was going to have it. And you know, unless I want to wear a diaper, which I don't, I can't physically go into the store and get one. So maybe this would be the best thing for my health ever. I ordered like so much healthy food that's coming, and it's ridiculous. Like, I think I might be healthy. I can go to the gym, and that's pretty much it. So holy shit, I think this is like a positive for me, man. Maybe communism isn't so bad after all. No, I'm just kidding. But you know, I'm doing me, guys. I'm relaxing. I'm enjoying my time. I'm doing whatever the hell I want to do. Maybe I'll pay somebody to go in and get me a bottle of cognac, and I'll come back, sit here, watch this live stream again because I like to rewatch it because I'm a narcissist, and that's about it.
Right on. Sounds good. Yeah, I'm just gonna chill out the rest of the day, drink a few beers. I got some chili cooking, and have me a nice bowl of chili later, and yeah, pretty simple, but I'm easy to please. You live the MGTOW lifestyle. Life can be pretty simple.
Yep.
And happy.
Couldn't agree more, brother. Couldn't agree more. What about you, Dan? What are you doing?
Oh, probably not a whole lot of anything good. Probably just catch up on a few sort of chores and stuff like that, and probably not do much of anything that's really very extravagant. But you know, just a typical day, I guess.
Awesome, brother. Well, hey, I want to thank you for hosting this, you guys. It was great.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, thanks for the interest. I appreciate being able to do it.
Appreciate you hosting, Dan. Yeah, like TVOR said, TVOR, thank you for joining us, and I really enjoyed this stream, and everybody in the comments, the commenters, and the participants that appreciate y'all too. So it's I am definitely happy to be part of this community, the greater community, and here to help while I can, where I can. So.
Yep. Good conversation. I think we covered a lot of good topics.
Definitely
appreciate talking to you guys.
Hopefully we do this again soon, guys. I appreciate it. And to the commenter, sorry I didn't respond to any of y'all. I didn't join the other thing. I kind of wanted to focus on this, and maybe I'll get better splitting my attention. But I'm the guy with the horse blinders. I just want to listen to these guys, and then when I'm doing my own stream, I can talk to you guys for some reason, but I can't walk and chew gum in this instance for some reason. I'll figure it out. Love you all. I love you all. I do. I promise you, I do.
Right on. But yeah.
There you go.
Awesome, guys. Appreciate it, and I'll catch up with you guys soon. Y'all take care.
Yep, same to you.
Right on. See you.